I think probably the most important trend right now for at least medical technology companies, I know my own company, is the growth in emerging markets. You've basically seen in the past 2 years sales growth in emerged markets. That includes the United States, but that's also the case with Western Europe. It's also the case with a lot of other more developed markets around the world, flatten out. Whereas, at the same time, the economic downturn has meant that a lot of emerging countries have sort of sustained demand, have greater economic power than they did before, and really want to invest in healthcare infrastructure for them and their families and their society with a greater determination almost at any time in history. China is perhaps the best example, where the Chinese government is putting in $18 billion into spreading healthcare to Western China, but that's equally the case with Africa, many different African countries, very much the case in India. It's really a universal trend in emerging economies where you really see it as a black and white picture. No growth in the United States, or little growth in the United States, with great growth in emerging countries. That's one big trend. And perhaps another, important trend is the global downturn itself has really meant that health systems all around the world are having to rethink the way in which they do virtually everything that they do, particularly here in the United States, but not only. That is, that most economies are running deficits that were powerful before. Now they're looking to healthcare as perhaps one of the biggest drivers of their deficits, healthcare in general, and then they're looking at different components within that healthcare sector and being a lot more critical about what they spend money on. So that's another big trend that people need to be focused on. That is the economics, the economic aspect of what it's costing to bring quality healthcare to their societies.
If we look in and around the area of pharmaceutical companies and new drugs and so on, one of the key challenges, I would say, both for U.S. companies but also for companies that are based in Denmark, like my own, is the challenges with the financial crisis. I think the financial crisis, which is pretty strong in Europe and I think also to some extent here in the U.S., has brought forward, or accentuated, you can say, is that there probably is a limit to how much societies can and will spend of taxpayers' money or insurers' money, as it would be here in the US, on drugs. And I think the days where you could just you developed a drug, put it on the market, probably slightly higher priced than a competitor product that was launched last year, those days are over. Certainly in Europe, we have seen the end of free pricing. Germany and UK were two markets where we've had free pricing for a long time. Germany has shifted now to a system that looks like the French, where you look at the benefits of the drug and then negotiate a price with the government. And in the UK, you can still launch it there, but the government will come in and say whether it's value for money in the end. And I think, I don't know about what will happen in the US, but what I can see is that now healthcare takes up 18 to 20% of the GDP and rising, and that's simply not sustainable in the long run. So how do you deal with that fact? So I think what companies should do or are challenged with are to be better at documenting the effects of the drug. And that, when I say document, it's not just that specific clinical effect. It's the whole, you can say, bringing in the cost perspective. You cannot just provide a drug and expect to get any price for it. You need to put the benefits of the drug, what it does to the body, but also how well it works with the patient. So is there a quality of life aspect to it? It's, for example, is it better to take a pill than take an injection? Yes, there is. It's easier to take a pill. It's less involved, and there's the pain with the injection. So benefits broadly defined, but also put that in relation to the cost of acquiring the drug.
With regard to patient health, patient-owned health healthcare, we are seeing more emphasis on patient as being responsible for their wellness. We're seeing a lot more investment, not in reactive healthcare like ERs, but more in improving population's health. So we're seeing a lot of opportunities, especially in the developed countries, for devices and systems that help patients actually do a better job of managing their health and wellness, be it pedometers or diabetes glucose measurement systems, and a variety of devices that exist around patient doing something with themselves, to themselves, to do a better job of taking better care of themselves is more and more of a trend, and a lot of opportunities there. And it's also important to think again of those solutions as being part of a bigger ecosystem of data that then becomes available to all of the agents, not only a patient, but also an institution and a clinician.
Thinking about the U.S. trade relations with China, and companies need to factor in that into their plans for the future. I do see the medical sector, and I say I, but also my colleagues on the ground in China. We have about 100 staff of 100 at the U.S. Embassy and consulates in the commercial section, and so they help gather the intelligence for American businesses on how they might best proceed in the market. And one of the sectors, the niches that we see the greatest opportunity is in the healthcare area. There's a few reasons behind this. One of the primary factors leading up to this is the aging population. Now, the Chinese elderly population is going to triple by 2050. With the one-child policy, it's had huge ramifications in terms of the balance, the socio-demographic balance. So you have this growing bubble of elderly that need nursing homes, that need different type of medical coverage. Those nursing homes in turn need staff that are trained. One of the trends behind this opportunity in the healthcare area is the economic, that goes hand in hand with the economic development, is the removing of the iron rice bowl, if you will. That's the system where the companies and the government, who owned the companies, provided all healthcare coverage. They provided pensions and insurance and everything families would need. So as that goes away, millions and millions of people have no medical coverage. The government recognizes this, and about 2 years ago they put in place a tremendous healthcare reform effort. More than $125 billion put towards this. And they're changing the whole healthcare infrastructure. They're building hospitals and clinics, refurbishing, elevating the quality of care that's provided. And so this represents great opportunity for American businesses that are looking to grow in the market.
Only 5% of the purchasing power exists here in the United States. 95% exists outside. So the opportunities for growth are much better outside the U.S. than they are in. I would also point out that we've probably reached a plateau of sorts in terms of our ability to import things into the United States, and in the future our economic success is going to depend on making things here, creating services here, and selling it to the rest of the world. So for future growth, looking outside the United States is very important.
I'd say that globalization presents a twofold opportunity. The first being, we know that there are a number of emerging markets that present tremendous amount of opportunity. But the second part of the challenge really is, how do you deliver a product that's applicable to that particular market? And so a lot of what we've seen historically have been U.S.-based, or even companies that are based not in the country that they're trying to do business in, will take their existing product, deliver it directly to that country, and expect it to work. I think over the past number of years, people have learned that that isn't exactly how you can do it, that there are some products that are transferable and that are able to be sold in these other markets. But more and more often we have to create products that are specifically designed for the market in which we're selling them. At GE in particular, we call this our in-country, for-country initiative. And so we have groups of marketers and product managers that are developing a product specifically for a market. I think another challenge with globalization is really around understanding the market within which you're dealing and the particular government constraints or restraints that are involved there. So if I think about China, for example, there is a lot that goes on in China currently today. Some work that I'm not involved in, but there was recent reports in the Wall Street Journal about GE and us giving away technology and innovation to the Chinese government. And there was a pretty quick response from Jeff, our CEO, Jeff Helm, the CEO, about we certainly are thinking about how that would affect us and that we don't necessarily need to give away our innovation as well because we have to be competitive in a global market as well. But I think the reason that was brought up is that you have to be relevant within the market within which you're doing business. And with the Chinese government, sometimes they have certain requirements or stipulations that other governments may or may not. And when you look at a business operating globally, you have to take those specific requirements into account to determine whether you're able to or not able to do business in that particular market.
Understanding that clinical guidelines across internationally and making that our benchmark, but also understanding that the patient is not that different. And the best way that we're going to help as industry to get there, to get streamlined across, is to help with training. So that's the biggest difference. It's not necessarily a product that wouldn't be adapted or that the patient has different needs. It's the training that has gaps. So I would say that a key to globalization and being part of that conversation is training clinicians and being a partner at the table to help them really understand and create a dialogue around truly what their needs are. Because sometimes somebody doesn't even know they have a need until you have a conversation with them. I think a great example that I loved, my first trip to India back in August when I first started, I had a phone call from my boss and he just said, listen, you just started this global role, get out of your American landscape, come to India, really understand what it's like. And I didn't understand what that meant until I got there, and I did truly see a government hospital in India, and I also saw how they were trained. So one of the weekends we flew to Pune, and this guy that's a leader in respiratory failure, he has been training people using Skype. So he's a leading clinician in India based out of Delhi, and he's been offering his courses just by logging on to Skype and training physicians in the area. Now, as GE, I mean, we have the power to train people. If we partner with a clinician like that, pull together our own nursing capabilities. We have a nurse on staff that is a neonatal nurse and also a clinical marketing. The power of exchanging that information just by taking what this one clinician's doing on Skype, and he's cutting edge, and distributing that more formally, it helps to really understand how we can change the dynamics there and advocate for a higher standard of care.